Good morning and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord, and today we are going to be talking about true diversity and inclusion, what that means, why it matters, and how we can achieve it. We are a solution-based show. We're all about presenting the problem and hashing out the solutions with our brilliant guests. You are also very much welcome to join us in the comments. I also want to just throw out a quick note. We have been having some technical issues with LinkedIn, so if at any point you have trouble seeing us, there is a link dropped in the comments to get over to YouTube to our show, or you can also just Google Career Launch Live and pull up our YouTube channel that way. But we are here to talk about true diversity, equity, and inclusion and the solutions that myself and my wonderful guests have in mind for some of the issues out there today. And without further ado, I will go ahead and bring on our first guest, Miss Kisha. Let's go ahead and bring her on. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Catherine?
I am fantastic. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be on the show.
I know. I'm so excited to have you. I'm so stoked. So real quick, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Kisha Velazquez. I'm the Director of Content Marketing at Junco. We're a startup that helps companies scale their diversity pipeline. So we help companies who want to diversify their teams and create more an inclusive culture. We help them bring in more underrepresented talent in their pipeline.
Which is beautiful. And it's so aligned with everything. I absolutely, absolutely love it. Good morning, Miss Kelly. We have somebody telling us good morning. And then I'm also going to go ahead and bring in our second guest, a friend of mine and a repeat guest, Miss Paola Torre. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you ladies today?
Good.
Wonderful. Thank you. So tell us who you are and what you do for a living.
My name's Paola Torre. I'm a Medicare advisor or consultant. I help people navigate through Medicare and their benefits and the wonderful world that nobody knows anything about.
Right. And it is, I've learned so much from you over the years. I just want to throw that. That's not our topic today, but I just want to throw that out. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating how much you can learn. And good morning to Miss Pam Koch as well. We have people jumping in and saying good morning to us today, which that's lovely. So I want to start off. So we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I actually, the first statement I want to make is this is a great time, folks, when you're listening to jump in and ask any questions that you have. We have three very different women here. And if you don't know, I work in recruiting and consulting. That's what I do for a living. And I have an anti-bias applicant tracking system out there. So you have three very different women here from different backgrounds with different careers. And so this is a great opportunity to ask questions. So feel free to chime in and ask questions as we're going along. So with this topic, so there's all different types of diversity, right? So people think diversity and they just think race or they just think gender. And it's so much more than that. There's so many more categories like socioeconomic diversity, age diversity, neurodiversity, and it just keeps going from there. Even the veteran community is considered a diversity. So lots of different diversity. So I want to kind of touch on that real quick. So Paola, you work a lot with the elderly community, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
what are some specific struggles that you see in that community?
Interestingly enough, as an agent, because that's what I am, I'm a broker agent, there's a lot of compliance against certain ways that we can navigate or where we present ourselves or even how we introduce ourselves to people. So I can't walk into a room of, say, senior citizens and just hand out my business cards. That would be out of compliance because it is actually considered an age discrimination. So we have to kind of, yeah, because it's almost like you're attacking, almost like saying, hey,
okay.
this, I know, you're who I'm looking for, even though, believe it or not, in other businesses, people do that. They solicit you. We're not allowed to solicit people.
That's interesting. I would have
Right?
never thought about that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like you can't solicit your own clients.
So a lot of times, if I walk into a room and I'm with friends or something and they're like, hey, give your card out. And I'm like, no, I can't. Because they can take it really wrong. I have to be very, introduce myself as what I do, say keywords,
Right.
and
But you
it
can't
triggers
age
right away.
discriminate even to
But I
sell.
can't. Yeah. And believe it or
That's so
not,
funny.
sometimes you have some people who are just turning 65 and that's the Medicare entering age, and
Right.
they don't look it. Or you have some that
That's
may
true.
look a little older. And it's like, you can't, it's a fine line there.
So I
You
want to
can't just
hit
say,
on
hey,
that point.
here's my card.
I want to hit on that point. So you can't always, some people judge a book by its cover, right? And they assume age, or they assume, there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions. So, and we have somebody asking for you to elaborate on that more. And I'm not exactly sure what she's asking you to elaborate on, but I will let you elaborate in just a moment. But Kisha, real quick, I want to get your take. So you and I both work in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. So the first group I want to touch on is actually the female community with you. And so what are some of the main things that you think would surprise our audience to learn about the discrimination that happens against women?
I mean, some of the things I can immediately think are like when you're in the interview process, a question that, and maybe it's not a shock that you would get, is about your marriage, or like any assumptions about a family. So assuming that you'll be the primary caretaker, even though it's 2022, and sometimes, you know, the husband is the primary caretaker, or if you're married, you'll be perceived differently. There'll be an expectation that you're going to have kids, or if you don't already have kids, and, you know, they might ask you about like your family planning, which is like none of their business, by the way.
And illegal. I just want to throw that on out there. It's nice and illegal too.
Exactly. Or, you know, if you're a mom, like how you will be able to balance that with your work life. I remember when I was first entering the workforce, like I was interviewing for a position that would require travel, and it was kind of like a sales and hospitality kind of role. And the person interviewing me, and it was one of my first interviews, was asking me like, well, how will your husband feel if you're traveling? And I was just like, so taken aback by that question. I was like thinking, first of all, like, why do you care? Or like, why does it matter?
Yeah.
And would you
why does
ask
that
like
even...
a man this question about like,
and the answer is no.
What answer would they expect? You know, that's one of those questions that's like, well, what if I said he would not like that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, exactly. Like, what exactly is your goal here with this question?
Ask that question.
So it's very interesting to me. So both of you were talking about the perceptions that people have of others, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Are those perceptions that people have, and assuming that this person fits into this box for whatever reason, whether it's a physical attribute, behavioral, whatever, that people have this assumption, oh, this is where we're going to fit in, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just to put this out there, folks. The reason I touched on these first is that is the problem that we're going to be addressing today. Now we're going to start diving into ideas and solutions. And again, feel free to go ahead and chime on in. So the main problem here is assumption or unconscious bias, right? So unconscious bias, again, and your brain is designed to have biases. I just want to put that out there. Our expert, Michaela McCord, who is a psychology and counseling major, has been on before talking about this. Your brain is actually designed to have these types of biases. The problem is they can't go unchecked. You have to give your brain new information and continue learning to throw up blockers and say, okay, I know, brain, that you think this, but that's not right. We have to do this too. So, Paola, going back to what you were talking about with your clients, right? And how you can't approach them directly and say, hey, you're old, come be my client, you know? So what do you see as why that was created, just very briefly, and then what solutions do you have, not just for yourself in sales, but also for the hiring community, as to how they can better communicate with that population? Because I think you've kind of become an expert at that.
Well, yeah. So there's different events, different things that we put together. Some things are geared towards sales, some kind of sales event that we're doing. It can be something educational and all that. So if we're doing something like that in the population, everybody that shows up, you're more, it's going to be more likely people who are on Medicare that are going to walk through the door. So you're a little bit in the green area there. But if it's something where it's a general thing, for example, maybe I'll help host a bingo night, or I'll help host a health fair. Anybody can come to do that. You can have a table set up. And when you have a table set up, I mean, I like to a lot of my clients, believe it or not, are the children of the people who are my clients, because they're helping their kids, their parents
Right.
navigate through like this mess. And they're the ones that'll come to me. So it's a good way for me to, I go to a lot of places where there aren't necessarily a ton of seniors sitting in the audience, because it's their kids that are actually reaching out to me. If we go to, believe it or not, I've picked this up through my kids, rec sports, who's in the
Oh yeah.
bleachers? Grandmas and
Right.
grandpas
Right.
all the time.
So it's
So
get
out
creative.
there,
It's get
yes.
creative to get in front of the right audience
A
and
lot
to
of,
communicate with
yeah,
that
you know,
community.
it's a lot of relationship building. You build these relationships with people because you're their resource and you're the person that they trust and they keep coming back to. So
Right.
not only did you see me at that, your grandchild's little league game, but I'm located here. This is what I do. We know our families. We get that sense of
Right.
we connect there in many different
That
ways.
community. And I think too, a great point that you're hitting on here is not just get creative with how you approach people, whether it's to hire them, get them as a client, whatever, but also to create that bond on the things that you're connected with, right? So
Exactly.
I tell employers that all the time. I'm like, connect with your people. I have one client that they do phenomenal work in the community. They do a lot of work with diversity, equity, inclusion. They do a lot of beautiful things, and they weren't sharing that with anybody. And it's like, I love that you're doing it because you actually do care. That's
Right.
beautiful, but communicate that to people so that they understand who you are
Yeah.
and they see
Yeah.
that bond. So that if somebody loves puppies and you just held a rescue event, yay, I'm connected to you. And if I care about diversity, equity, inclusion, and you're doing work in that arena, great. Let's bond on that. So Kisha, kind of furthering on that, as people are hiring, what are some of the things that they can do to best, because this is your jam, this is exactly what you guys do, right? So what can they do to help bring in a more diverse and truly, I'll just stop it there, with a more diverse crowd? How can they do that with all the different diversities?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing they could do is realize that when especially underrepresented talent is looking for a new job, they're checking out their social media presence and they're checking out their website. So it's very important that you have a strong employer brand. And basically, your employer brand is like what your employees say about you. It's your reputation, what it's like to work there, and that's what people are looking for. They're looking for signals that it's a positive experience to work there, that they're not going to work there for like 8 months and then want to look for another job because it's completely toxic. So the way that you show your employer brand is by highlighting the people that work at your company. That's the
Right.
culture, is your team and their experiences. So I know one thing that we do at Junco, we share the stories of our employees. We have underrepresented people within our team. We have people who are from the trans community, from the LGBTQ community, and they share their experiences of what it's like to get a job, or maybe even past experiences that haven't been so great. But they touch on that, and we give them like a platform or a voice, whether
Right.
it's through like blogs, or just spotlighting them on LinkedIn for a post, that they can bring their dog to the office, any way that they can feel more safe and more comfortable working on site. We
I
try to
love
highlight that.
that. So you really
Yeah.
listen to the other people, and that's so important, folks. Listening matters. I was just sharing with these two lovely ladies about the listening sessions that my mother has had going at her hospital for years, and they've been wonderfully productive, and they've really helped them to grow successfully. My biggest tip to everybody when it comes to hiring, the interview process, all of that, is don't think about what you need in an interview process or that people like you need. Think about anything a candidate could possibly need. HR folks, this is your job. Embrace it. Know it in your mind. This is your job. Seriously. So when you're planning out a hire process, think of it as, okay, so if somebody has ASD, autism spectrum disorder, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that this process will work for them? What if they have ADHD? What if they are part of a marginalized community that doesn't necessarily always feel safe? What can we do to communicate to them that this is a good place? What that's a safe place, and that we're allies, and this type of thing. What if it's an elderly person? And this has actually happened. I've actually seen this in a hiring process where everybody's talking about the sporting events and all these kinds of things that they want to do, and oh, how they're very pro family and all this. Well, if a person's kids are out of the house, that's not something that matters to them anymore, right? These are not things that really speak to them. So really stop and think about, and veterans, same kind of thing, is this, a place that supports, the veterans and can work with you and has complementary benefits to the VA system and all that. So really stop and think about what else is out there, and have listening sessions. To Kisha's point, have listening sessions, do your research. I did that with my ATS. I brought people in, I talked to them, I gathered them. Now we have a question. Great. So if I am self-employed, or a company of one, how can I convey the ways that I value diversity to potential clients? Ooh.
Actually,
that's a good one.
If I can jump in there.
Yeah.
I was thinking of something very similar to that question. Kisha just mentioned the culture that you build upon. And that's something that I try to build upon as well when I try to bring in the families into all the different things. You have to really like what you do. And to really feel and see what you're building there. When you see these people who are, employees, entrepreneurs and stuff who are out there in the community doing things that don't necessarily have to do with a sale, you're
Right.
building that culture and you're bringing people towards you. I do a lot of things in the community that for me, I can see how it comes full circle. For someone who just sees me as that insurance broker may not see it. But it's like I mentioned, you'll see me at these leagues. You'll see me at, the Humane Society. You'll see me at volunteering in different places out with the veterans, doing different things. It all comes full circle. I'm not signing, and no one's signing anything with me at that time.
Right.
But this is the people that I serve. And these are the families that I help. So I'm helping in different areas, sort of giving back to a way that is not directly benefiting me. There's
Right.
no money in my pocket, and that's not the interest. The goal is, what am I doing out there?
Right.
To bring all of this together and be different than every other agent that's cold calling you.
So I'm hearing live your values.
Exactly.
Live your values. That's the main. And Pam, I believe that you do, by the way. I happen to know the lovely woman who asked that question. And I do believe that she lives her values, but also showcase that. So that's the next tip, right? So take a pic, and Paula, you do it in the best way. Actually, you should start doing it more on LinkedIn and not just Facebook, because guys, she does it very well. So she'll post about what she's doing, but not in a way that's about her. She's showcasing what she cares about. She'll post the sad little puppy that needs a house, and needs a home and family to love them, which is killing me, by the way. Please stop doing that. Not really, keep it up. And she posts about her work with the women's club, and she posts about going to clean up the beaches and all of these things that matter to her. And so Kisha, what's the next step to that then too, specifically to the diverse crowd? Because that's obviously who you market to every single day. So what are some of your tips as well?
Yeah, just definitely have that culture internally where it's not DEI that's performative, but it's actually actions that you're taking. So things that you already talked about, like you can have listen and learn sessions where you give the opportunity for like underrepresented talent to share their perspectives on things and share ideas of things they would like to improve to leadership. There's this idea of reverse mentoring where it's not just leadership giving, different advice top down, but it's actually from the bottom up. So those people on even the associate level giving advice of like how we can make this team more inclusive, like how can we feel seen and more valued. So that's definitely one way, is making sure that your DEI is like integral to your company culture and not just like performative, basically.
I would performative. That's a key word for me, because so many people, in fact, I read a statistic this morning preparing for the show that in a study by Apollo Tech, 57% of companies said that their company needed to become more diverse and needed to take actions that direction. You want to take a guess as to how many are actually doing anything about it?
and what actions?
Less than 10%.
Yeah.
People want to say that they're doing the things, and I want to focus too on the listening sessions and any other feedback that you're getting, even if it's from people responding to your posts on social media. Let me be very clear to you. If someone tells you that something is a problem, you need to listen, because if that one voice is saying it, there's thousands more out there thinking it. Definitely. So you need to be sure that if somebody says something, that you take it to heart. And if it's contrary to what you're doing, if it's saying that what you're doing isn't enough or isn't right, stop and think about that and go, wait a minute, Okay. For instance, I'm going to tattle on myself a little bit. I did a post a while back about neurodiversity, and the image that I used did not list every single condition. Now, it kind of broadly stroked each one, each kind of category for neurodiversity, but it didn't specifically list. And I had a woman post that that it kind of hurt her that her specific diversity was not represented. And I told her, I said, and at first I got a little bit defensive, and I was like, okay, but I couldn't find an image that literally had like every single diversity. I said, and there's so many, the list would just be the image would just be a list. It wouldn't be a very pretty image, But then I stopped and I went back and I said, but you're right. I said, and I need to find a way to represent. And if it's not going to specifically list yours, it shouldn't specifically list anybody. And I can just list the more broad categories. And I went, okay, you know what? Lesson learned, Catherine. There you go. So I thought I was being inclusive, and that was truly my intent, but it didn't come across right. And so that little bit of feedback was so very helpful to me to learn. So you have to learn to listen and cast your ego aside, which is super hard to do sometimes. Mm-hmm. Cast that ego aside and just really take the opportunity to listen. So my next topic is one of my favorite topics because it gets like, and you have both heard my all famous, fire the a-hole, just fire them, just be gone. So when you have somebody, I want to talk about what happens when you have somebody in your organization that doesn't, and thank you, Pam, she just complimented me. Thank you. When somebody does not get on board with your inclusion, what do you do? And so I want to start because Paola, I mean, you've been in businesses of all shapes and sizes throughout your career. So as somebody who has led, who has owned her own business, who's been at the bottom, grown her way to the top, all of that, what would be your number one thought if somebody is struggling to get on board with the inclusion message?
I think when we don't get on board or what stops you, because once you get to that point where you realize, all right, something's got to be different, mm-hmm. or I'm lacking somewhere, or when you get there, a lot of times we're worried about, well, what's going to happen if I do this? Or the ideas in your head of, this is what I want to do, but how are they going to take it? Sometimes that's a risk you just have to take. Now, I'm a minority. I come from a place where the minority was the majority. And now I live in a place where the majority doesn't look like me. So a lot of places I walk into, I'm the only other person in the room, and I'm the only, I can be the only either woman entrepreneur. First of all, I'm in insurance in a man's world. Right. So that's one thing why when you see me out in the fields or doing all these other things, you don't see any other guys out there because they're all about numbers. Not to sound sexist or anything.
I would say you're going against our inclusion.
I'd love to see some men included in that. And I do bring them in, but they're not always in insurance. They'll be like someone who's not in insurance. But, it's the difference there where it's like, okay, I'm always swimming with the sharks here, in sales and this and the other. It's like, what makes me different? I've got all this background and I've seen it all, and I see how people, our elderly population or our senior population at some point kind of gets forgotten, or they only get the cards from the kids, or, like the homeschool group, or the, Girl Scouts or whatever. And it's like, what about everybody else? We're all going to get there. How do you want to feel? So for me, it's always like whatever idea that I feel like I got to think more in terms of what the end goal is more than what the reception is, because sometimes even that little noise or the ruffling of the feathers you might do, that might be just what was needed, to start something and to get to that. I achieved it. It wasn't easy. Nothing is easy. And that's what I tell myself all the time. If it wasn't easy, it was worth it. There's a reason why it's not easy.
And it is, to your point, it is scary sometimes as an organization. Like, what is this going to do? Like, are we going to lose people along the way? Is it really drastically going to change us? What is that going to look like? And it can be very stressful to go through a major cultural change like that. But if it's important and it's your values and it's your ethics and your integrity, that's what you have to do. Plus, guys, let me tell you, and there are so many studies out there to back this up, but one is by Boston Consulting Group that says that over 70%, and I can't remember, I had the exact number in my head earlier today, but over 70% of the population really cares about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's a priority for them when they're choosing a company to work with. And that also can carry over into who they're going to do business with as well. So when you're thinking about that, stop and think, okay, this is going to matter to our client base. And I like to spin it and think about the opportunity that's there too, right? So yes, this may be big and scary, but to your point, Paula, what additional customers am I going to get out of this, or what additional opportunities, or what innovations? And so try to look at it as a positive and keep going. But now, Kisha, here's my question for you. What happens when you have that leader who keeps going, yeah, but we don't need to have this inclusion in our interview process. We don't need to have this accommodation, readily available for people. That's not convenient to me as a human. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, if they don't want to do it because it's the right thing to do, you do kind of have to make your business case, right, of why diversity matters. And you hit the nail on the head when you talked about innovation. It's when you have people from different backgrounds and different perspectives approaching a problem, you'll have a much richer solution. And you'll also avoid terrible, social media catastrophes where people do things that are totally offensive and then they'll get dragged publicly. Or they'll get canceled. So you definitely don't want that to happen from a marketing perspective.
Right.
You want to have different voices in the room when you're planning campaigns or you're presenting a product. Because like you said, your potential customer cares about that, especially millennials. We definitely care about diversity and seeing people that look like us represented in marketing materials or having diverse perspectives. So,
and I want to specify too, don't just put a random Black person in your stuff and say, I'm being inclusive.
Exactly.
So you're in marketing and employer branding and all that. What are some of your specific suggestions with that to avoid the glaring tokenism?
I mean, you just need those people in the room planning the different campaigns. Like a lot of marketing teams, they'll just have one Black person. I've been that one Black person in the room with that different perspective. And everybody internally in the team, people need training on, like you said, anti-bias and microaggressions, because when you are the only person of color or the only woman presenting an idea, sometimes you're not perceived the same way, or maybe people will roll their eyes or interrupt you or talk over you. And it always feels like you kind of have to constantly advocate for yourself. So it kind of has to be like that person not only needs to be in the room, but they need to feel like they belong, that they can be heard and seen. So it's kind of like cultural training, but also having them in the room.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And Corbin, who actually just dropped a comment, he and I had a fantastic conversation, not decision. I don't know where that came from. Conversation. We decided that this is how it ought to be. We had a fantastic conversation about how the neurodiverse are dismissed in the corporate setting, and how ideas are dismissed and how they're dismissed in interviews. And let me tell you something, folks. So first of all, 29+% of the population is neurodiverse. So stop thinking it's weird. Stop thinking that makes somebody 1 in a million. It's not true. Neurodiversity is everything, any difference in how the brain processes information. It even encompasses epilepsy and things like that. So because those conditions also can change your communication style, how you receive information, all of that. So what we were talking about is people are missing out on these phenomenal people. And let me tell you, folks, so my top advisor for my technology is an autistic Black man who lives in UK. And he's the most brilliant human. And he sends me the most amazing, well thought out, well structured, presented fact-based feedback forms I've ever seen. And to have that type of insight and to see how a different mind might perceive. And I will tell you too, that my experience with the neurodiverse community is that there's a lot more understanding that there are different types of communication styles from that community, because they're all so different. They're like, okay, well, if I'm different, who else is different? And it just so it's a natural progression for that community. But I will tell you, folks, if you're not tapping into that, if you're not reaching out to people who are older, right, Paula, who have that different perception, and reaching out to both client and employee base, and reaching out to people who are in LGBTQIA, who are veterans, who have different socioeconomic backgrounds, who are gender diverse in whatever beautiful way that manifests, you are missing out. You are completely 100% missing out. And plummet your business 100%. So as we close, and this is great. I just want to keep talking to you guys. I feel like I should have made this an hour-long episode. I feel like I really missed the mark.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention really quickly.
Yes.
Sarah Blakely from Spanx hires moms for their creativity and last moment quick thinking abilities that moms have.
That's right. It's very true. Yeah. And it's a very, remember that every group has different ideas and all of that. I'm going to be doing an episode coming up with Tara Furiani and Boggs. Oh my gosh, she's married. And congratulations, by the way, Miss Tara. We're also very excited about that. But Miss Tara Furiani Boggs and Alan Ibbotson about employment gaps and the biases there and how to squash all that and some of that nonsense. That's going to be a very fun episode, guys. So definitely tune in for that. But I want to thank you both for reaching out. This is such an important topic. This is something that requires furthering of conversation. And so I want to point out, guys, we've talked not just from an employer standpoint, but from a business standpoint and how this affects you with your clients. Your clients care about this stuff. Your clients want to see that you do too. They want to share your ethics. So real quick, Paola, give us your last 3 takeaways on the sales side of it as to how you can market yourself best and inclusively.
Remember important dates when you speak to your clients. That's part of building relationships with them. Be out there and, don't just go towards those people. You want to be a part of the family. Meet their, be in those events and those activities, take part in all of that. Be someone that's known in your community, not just for what you're selling,
to
but
everyone.
For what you do.
To everyone. Yes. And what's your third?
I thought I did 3.
You did 2. That's okay. But you know what? You hit your third earlier because you talked about the importance of living your values. And to me, that's your biggest takeaway. You nailed it with that one. And put your values out there. Share your values. Be proud of your values. Yeah, don't be shy. Put that mess on out there. Yeah, like what you do. Ms. Kisha, I want at least one marketing tip from you because, girl, you are a great marketer. I've seen your stuff. But also, I love your tips, your 3 tips for employers and how they can be truly inclusive in their not just hire process, but in their entire existence.
Yeah, I mean, definitely train your leadership because a lot of the culture comes from the leadership. So do like monthly or quarterly trainings on things like, anti-bias, on microaggressions, understanding those different things and how you're modeling that to your team. It makes a huge impact. And also invest in your DEI because it really is a competitive advantage. 84% of the population, they're looking for new jobs, according to the Greenhouse Candidate Experience Survey from this year. So a lot of people are trying to figure out if the grass is greener on the other side and looking for different employment opportunities. So make sure that you're actually investing in your DEI and so you can get the results that you're looking for to transform your company. Trying to think if there's a third one. Just understand that diversity is not a disadvantage. People who come from like underrepresented groups, whether they're neurodiverse or people of color, they're not less quality just because they are different from you. They just have, different experiences and different perspectives from you, but don't operate from the mindset that because they're not the normal that they are, less qualified.
I think, and to your point, remember that different is not that somebody who has a condition that makes them physically diverse or mentally diverse or neurodiverse, that does not make them sick or crazy or disabled. Stop thinking that. Get that right on out of your head. Stop thinking that a mother is useless because she's taken a year off to be with her child. Stop and pay attention to the individual. Everything in your hiring process, this is my jam, guys. This is where I live every single day of my life. Everything about your hiring process and your promotions and all of that needs to be about, hey, what's going on with you as the individual? Who are you? What's going on here? Right. Stop picturing your ideal candidate. Stop doing all that. In fact, you and I are going to talk about that soon, Kisha. We're going to have a whole little live about that. So stop doing that. And my final tip is, and this is a big one, fire the asshole. I'm not even going to bleep myself. Stop it. If somebody is not living up to your integrity, if somebody is not being inclusive, get them out. I don't care if they're your top sales rep. I don't care if it's your CFO. Get them out and get them out now. And then tune into Tara Furiani Boggs' show. not the HR lady. One of my favorites. You will get woke real quick. I promise. I hate using that term, but you will learn so much so very, very quickly. Oh, Mervin chimed in. Oh, so this is who I was talking about earlier, guys. This is one of the most fascinating human beings in the entire world. Everybody needs to hire him for everything. I don't even know what to say about him, but he has so many great gifts. But this is a fascinating, interesting person. Follow him, connect with him. Great, awesome person. And Kisha, tell us how to find you and anything exciting coming up that you have going on.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. This is the only social media platform that I really use. I'm sorry, Twitter, but I can't figure it out. So
I can't with Twitter either. Right there with you.
LinkedIn. And like you said, next Thursday, we're going to have our own webinar that's live. It's going to be really exciting about firing poor hiring practices. So, with diversity and creating a really diverse culture in your team, it starts with how you let people in. And it's really important for the gatekeepers to make sure that their hiring practices are inclusive from the very beginning. So you're getting that underrepresented talent in your pool and in the beginning of your pipeline. So
100%. And Miss Paola, how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn, but I'm promising, especially with Catherine, that I'm going to work on my LinkedIn a lot more. When I first met Catherine, she was very LinkedIn, and then I'm like, Catherine, I can't figure it out.
I promise to personally help you out with this.
So you'll find me there. I try to be on all social media platforms. There are some that I'm not on. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Snapchat. I'm not, whatever.
Yeah,
I will
whatever. But you can find her.
You'll find me on Facebook for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And these are wonderful ladies. If you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have needs, reach out to them. They are amazing, wonderful human beings. And if you want to learn even more about what they do and all the awesome things that they can bring to you and to your world, definitely connect with them on LinkedIn. Reach out and ask a question. Join us next week, same time, same place, another Career Launch Live. And with that, we bid you all adieu.